Hello, good afternoon. Today we will be discussing the line shape factor and various type of broadening mechanisms in laser. Uh, so far in our last lectures, we have discussed how the population inversion takes place, how the laser action takes place inside the active medium and the cavity resonator. So all these things are now clear to us. But before discussing a particular laser system, one important topic which remains to be discussed is this one, is broadening. Because when you look at the various type of radiations, even the laser beam, it is not a single line. Although sometimes we say that a laser of X frequency, omega zero, that is resonant frequency. But does it mean that only a single line is there in the laser? Single frequency is there? No, it has a bandwidth. That bandwidth, delta omega or delta nu, I mean we or delta f, we call it in different nomenclatures. So there is a line width, there is a bandwidth. So we have to define that. And to define that, we need to understand a line shape factor. That means there is a line for a particular frequency of radiation and how its shape varies. Once we discuss these 2 points, we will be very comfortable in discussing different laser systems or their applications. So let's go to the first slide. Uh, First, we discuss the line shape function, and we just define it here. A line shape function is a mathematical function. Like here you see z omega. Omega is the frequency. So this line shape function is basically the g function describing the shape of an absorption or emission line for a radiation. You know, in a laser, uh, first the absorption takes place, the stimulated absorption, and then emission takes place. Whether it is a spontaneous emission explained by Einstein coefficients of spontaneous emission, or whether it is a stimulated emission explained by Einstein's coefficient of stimulated emission. Whatever be the emission. So for absorption and for emission, there is a particular shape of radiation, and that will be defined by a line shape function. And this is introduced to account for the spread of a radiation frequency over a certain frequency range. And you can see it here. For example, g omega is the line shape function, and since there is a spread in the radiation frequency, because you see here omega 0 is the central frequency for the radiation of that particular laser beam, but there are other wavelengths associated or other frequencies associated with this central frequency, and the width is defined here is omega wd. Okay, d is for Doppler, which we will discuss later, but this delta omega defines the width, which we can more specifically say FWHM, that is full width at half maximum for that line shape. So in order to understand this, that why a spread occurs, why a line shape changes from really a line to such a shape. So let us look at a particular case. See, at the higher excited states, the levels, the states are very closely spaced. That means the energy has a certain range there at the higher states. And the example is the 2p level of hydrogen atom. It has a certain energy width delta E, which is equal to this H cross delta omega. Delta omega is, that is the E2 minus E1, you can say, for that particular level, for 2p level, right? So, and that means whatsoever atoms are here in this range in the excited state, they will absorb a frequency uh, falling between this range. That means they will emit a radiation of frequencies falling under this range of delta omega. So for a transition from 2p to 1s, you we can clearly see that delta omega for this level, there is a wide range here, and this is already given here is 4 into 10 to the power minus 7 electron volt, which corresponds to, through this formula, to delta omega equal to 6 into 10 to the power 8 per second, which is almost, yeah, I think it's 600 megahertz. Now this is delta omega. Now the resonant frequency for or the central frequency for that radiation, it's so much omega 0 and this much. This is very high, right? 1.5 into 10 to the power 16 hertz. So now you can, if you compare it with this curve, the central frequency omega 0, that is here, but the delta omega, which we will have to define where it will lie, here or here. So if you point out here, it is FWHM. So delta omega is this much. So what is this delta omega upon omega 0? So this is we are defining this as a term to show the spectral purity of a radiation, which is so much. So in other words, I can say that if delta omega is much less than omega 0, then we can call that radiation as spectrally pure, right? And this example was only to show that how a line of frequency of radiation omega 0 is spread, and the spread is because of this variation in the energy level uh, for a particular band, for a particular level. So this is as far as the explanation for the spread of a line is concerned, right? And this ratio, the more this more less is the value of this ratio, more will be the spectral purity of that radiation. This is what we learned. Now if you recall, last time we had discussed about the gain coefficient, which was related to the population inversion factor, right? Now we have this term now g omega also. That means the line shape function also. That means what we are saying here is that this gain coefficient is directly proportional to line shape function. That means if the line shape function is very narrow, that means our threshold required for gain coefficient will also be very low, right? And also this n2 minus n1, that means population inversion, threshold population inversion will be inversely proportional to this line shape function. These are the two things which we can see here, and we had discussed it last time, right? Now just to introduce to you the two uh, 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 line shapes, we have here the Gaussian distribution, which again it is a broadening like this, and the Lorentz distribution. Now this particular case which is being shown here is for a Doppler broadening, which is a Gaussian, which is having a Gaussian shape, right? So this is how we are explaining here the line shape function. Now we'll move over to the next to discuss the various types of broadening. So the broadening are of two types. One is homogeneous broadening and other is non-homogeneous broadening. And under this we will be discussing the various type of broadening, that is Doppler broadening, collisional broadening, and natural broadening. What is homogeneous broadening? Homogeneous broadening is a type of emission spectrum broadening in which all atoms radiating from a specific level uniformly under consideration radiate with equal opportunity. That means they they all are simultaneously and with equal amount are participating into the emission process, right? So if an optical emitter shows homogeneous broadening, then its spectral line width, that means the line shape factor which we just discussed, is its natural line width, and that will have a Lorentzian profile. Similarly, we have the inhomogeneous broadening, in which there is again a uh, change in the shape of delta omega, or the width of the delta omega, uh, which will be depending more on the different radiating conditions of different atoms. That means each atom will have, we can have different velocity, can have different collision criteria. So each atom will participate differently. So if such a situation occurs, then that means the absorptions and emission will have different cross sections, different spectral shapes. So such a radiation resulting from difference in velocities, or difference in collision cross sections of different atoms is referred to as the inhomogeneous broadening. And as we will see later, that Doppler broadening is a good example of inhomogeneous broadening. Now, now let us discuss the Doppler broadening. You might have heard about a Doppler radar in microwaves, and you might have seen a practical example of a police system which detects the speed of your car while you are moving on a road in your vehicle. Now, the detection of your speed by the police inspector system is uh, because of this Doppler system. So Doppler broadening is very popular as far as general applications are concerned. Even the concept is very interesting. The first reference which is here is a slightly long one, so this you can see on your own, but I will just refer to the second one, which is very small one, just to indicate you that how a Doppler broadening occurs, and then I will explain to you the further part which I have written here. So you can just see this uh, explanation. You see, when a here is the position of the observer, and when a for your case it can be an atom also, uh, that when it is coming closer to the observer, the frequency of radiation uh, from this radiation source is reducing, and when this atom is going away from the observer, its frequency of radiation is decreasing. So that is what I wanted to share with you. Now, uh, this particular case was for a for any observer and for any radiation source. It can be with an ambulance. You can, for example, in the first case, first YouTube reference, an ambulance which is coming closer to you will have an increase in its frequency, that means increase in the frequency of sound, and as it goes away from you, it has a decrease in its frequency of sound. Now that is also an example of Doppler effect. Now this Doppler effect is very clearly observed in case of stars also, and that is why it is very uh, uh, useful for astronomy. So students who will be studying the astrophysics will have great interest into this. So broadening, I will just explain it. Broadening of spectral lines due to Doppler effect caused by a distribution of velocities of atoms or molecules. One such example is due to thermal motion of particles. So whatever be the reasons, in case of your lasers, thermal motion is one example, because in a gas laser, the random motion of particles are because of certain reasons. One is thermal. So when thermal motion causes a particle to move towards the observer, the emitted radiation will be shifted to a higher frequency. Similarly, when the emitter moves away from the observer, the frequency will be lowered. So for a non-relativistic thermal velocities, that means when this V, velocity of the emitting radiation, is much less than the velocity of light c, then the frequency will depend upon how much this formula, where V0 is nu 0 is the rest frequency, right? And nu 0 plus minus nu 0 into nu upon c. So if the emitter is coming towards the observer, its frequency will increase, so it will be nu 0 plus, and if it is going away from the observer, it will be reduction, which is nu 0 minus. So nu 0 is the frequency of the radiation, right? And nu will be the observed frequency. Now, as far as the application is concerned, I will just read it for you. In astronomy and plasma physics, the thermal Doppler broadening is one of the explanations for the broadening of spectral lines, and as such gives an indication for the temperature of observed material. That is further instrumentation, but we are talking about how a Doppler broadening occurs, and I have written this note only to help you to to to, uh, to analyze each application. For example, it can be applicable in your interstellar gas clouds, in your nuclear systems also, in gas cooled reactors also. You can read it how it works. For me, the most important is that in a laser system, the distribution, the spread of the radiation, delta omega d, which you can see here, is dependent upon 2 omega 0, that is the central frequency, 2 kb Boltzmann constant, T temperature of the gas, M atomic mass of the gas, C velocity of light. So this is how it is dependent upon this. And uh, such a Doppler broadening is predominant or more significant for gas laser systems where the pressure is very low, right? The temperature is very high, that is already understood here, inversely proportional to atomic mass of the atom. So this Doppler broadening is more a case of a helium neon laser, which operates at slightly lower pressure. So this, I think you can appreciate this term, and you can prepare yourself for more understanding if you go into the details using the reference books which I will be discussing later on. Now, second broadening is the collisional broadening. So the collisional broadening, as the name suggests, is because of collisions between the gas molecules. And I will just explain to you. The finite duration of the radiation process of electron transition leads to a finite width of line in accordance with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So since collisions are occurring, and because of these collisions, there is a change uh, in the atomic transition levels of the gases, because they are losing their or gaining their energy also. So when this uncertainty takes place, so you can very well apply the Heisenberg principle of uncertainty with delta E into the delta E is the energy of radiation, and delta T is the collision time, mean collision time between two collisions. So this will always be have an uncertainty that is greater than or equal to 1. So for a high pressure gas, where more such collisions will be taking place, radiation times can be much greater than the interval between atomic collisions. And this perturbation of colliding atoms causes premature transition, right, and emission of photons. So at a lower level, the decreased lifetime of the state creates an increased uncertainty in photon energy, which broadens the emission line. So in a nutshell, you can say that Heisenberg principle delta E upon delta T, T is the tau zero, you can say the collision time here. So this will have an uncertainty factor. That means it will have a width, and this width is referred to as collisional broadening. As the temperature of the gas increases, the collision interval decreases and the broadening becomes more pronounced. So it is directly proportional to T also. Atoms in such a gas cannot be considered as isolated systems and need to be treated statistically. Yeah, that's okay. These are the small things. But more important was that at a high pressure in a gas laser, the collision broadening will be very significant, and as you can see here that collision broadening is most significant at high pressure, low temperature, and is for large wavelength. That means towards the lower frequency range of the laser system. And CO2 laser, which works at higher pressure, is a very good example for that. Now I will just give you an example for a helium neon laser, as you can see here. uh, just a moment. First, let me tell about the line shape factor for the collisional broadening. In the line shape factor, the uh, in the collisional broadening, the line shape factor is predominantly a function of collision time, inverse of collision time, because it is tau zero square. But anyway, the overall spread of the collisional line width delta omega c, c is for collisional, is inversely dependent upon the collision time. So if collision time is high, then the collision the line width or bandwidth because of collision or broadening will reduce. So so for a gas laser of having this value, the delta omega c will be so much or delta nu c will be so much. This is simple. But what is more important is that for a helium neon laser, which is at slightly lower pressure, the Doppler line is more important. See, the Doppler broadening has 1300 megahertz bandwidth, as you saw in the previous case, whereas in the same laser, the collisional broadening is 0.64 megahertz, because the helium neon laser operates at 0.5 torr and the natural broadening is of the range of 20 megahertz. So that means each broadening will have its share in the broadening, but we have to see which is more predominant. Now if we further develop an empirical relationship for this delta omega c or delta nu c, because delta omega c will be 2 pi delta nu c. So delta nu c will be dependent upon the emission cross sections, collision cross sections uh, uh, for the gas atoms which is participating, and is inversely proportional to the atomic mass of the gas or molecules, Boltzmann constant, and temperature, and is directly proportional to the pressure. So as you can see here that if your gas laser is operating at high gas pressure, your collisional broadening will be predominant. So this is another thing which we have to discover. Now the third part is the natural broadening, which is a very simple case of natural broadening. By the word itself you can infer, like we saw in the first case, uh, the, uh, in case of hydrogen atom there was a spontaneous transition from 2p to 1s, right? And this was a case of spontaneous emission. So in spontaneous emission, uh, we observe the natural broadening because you can't control it. And in a laser system, spontaneous emission has a lower contribution. So you can say that I don't find a laser system having a significant contribution from natural broadening. So in case of natural broadening, line shape factor will be predominantly dependent upon the spontaneous lifetime, which is again dependent upon the emission coefficients of spontaneous emission. And for a for a for a natural broadening, the line shape factor will be dependent upon these values, and more importantly, line shape factor will be inversely proportional to the line width at FWHL. So, so that's all we wanted to discuss. The three things which we knew today was the Doppler broadening, collisional broadening, and natural broadening. The homogeneous broadening, as we can see, can happen more in case of natural broadening and collisional broadening because all atoms are participating into that. Whereas in case of Doppler broadening, it is more a case of a inhomogeneous broadening because it is depends upon the observer's position and the movement of atoms, radiating sources with respect to the observer, right? So this is what we want to say. These are the reference books which you can refer to. So thank you very much. Thank you.